Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 3 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under the @Karma Stories podcast handle. Alright, on to the stories, let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Burn and Count. Do exactly and only as told? Okay. Take holiday ASAP? Okay. Check emails on holiday? Okay, but it'll cost you in the long run. To set the scene, recently directly employed at UK HQ for a sizable national B2B company that I'd contracted for. Me is me, your OP, Bob is my new micromanaging boss, Jim is my nice hiring manager. The guy who talked me into joining rather than continuing on contracts, only mentioned as his warning to cover my rear with Bob made this possible. So to the story before you lose interest. Bob started our relationship with a request for one-on-one meeting to understand my role, as it was one they'd never experienced except as an end stakeholder. Seems promising, so I prepare a concise but thorough briefing presentation to outline core deliverables and resource allocations as they stood. Dear reader, I lie not. Second slide showing the period spread of legal and corporate compliance activities was up for about 3 seconds when I was instructed to cease presenting and dress down as follows. Paraphrased for expediency and clarity, as Bob had, as I later learned, a tendency to ramble on tangential lines. Do you presume to instruct me, a board director, your superior in all aspects, and your direct manager on how to run my subordinates? No. I presume that you called this meeting to familiarize the key deliverables and legal requirements of a business area that was hitherto the exclusive remit of Jim. If this was a misinterpretation on my part, I apologize. And that's quite enough. You're here to be told what, how, and when to do your job. I'm having a mental replay of overheard break room conversations about Bob's need to control everything. Bob continues as I settle into the at-ease pose adopted by frequently disciplined grammar school boys and military recruits. I am in charge. I give the instructions, and you treat anything that could be construed as a request as a direct order. The only time I want to hear from you is for clarifications, authorizations, or to confirm that you have received, understood, and actioned my orders. My blood was rushing in my ears. The nails on both hands were close to splitting my palms, but I knew anything I said would end badly for my salary, and I'd have to play nice. I gritted my teeth. Understood. May I clarify one thing, please? Bob looks at me with utter contempt. What exactly was unclear from what I just said? I reverted to a customer service developed, crap-eating tone. Nothing was unclear, only you omitted to reveal how and when I am to receive orders. Bob turned crimson. Email when it hits your inbox. My PA will have minutes of this meeting ready before you've made it back to your desk. Now out. I am too senior to waste more time on this. About 6 months later, after fastidious compliance with directives issued to me, mostly via Bob's nice but very timid PA, and careful cover-my-butt archiving of all comms and backups to keep us legal, and I add, all whilst discreetly exploring alternative career options, both within and outside the company, I am in receipt of a meeting invitation to attend Bob's office. At least the order came forth with opportunity for malicious compliance that started the avalanche. Bob didn't look up from his monitor. OP, I need you to book 2 weeks holiday to be taken ASAP. This off-the-record request is your #1 priority. Klaxons going off in my head. I'm about to be stood up to take the fall for the state of our compliance submissions had fallen into. Luckily, I did everything required legally of me. I'm not responsible under policy or law for the compliance, only what I am told to do. I decided this is my chance to goad Bob's ego. 2 weeks? ASAP. Gladly. I can hand over everything by the end of this week, and I did get ahead of the monthlies in case you forgot to request them, so could start with next week and the week after. Bob looked oddly relieved and made eye contact. PA will process and authorize. Those monthlies better be perfect. You are dismissed. Friday comes and the anticipated flurry of last-minute requests and instructions come through. Amongst the laundry list was the utter gem I had hoped for. A direct email, not PA acting as, with instruction to keep company phone with me at all times, and to keep regular twice daily contact throughout the 2 weeks. No one asked what I was doing with my impromptu 2 weeks away from the office. I was fortunate to have the chance to fly halfway around the world to stay with my brother. 20 minutes booking flights, no luggage or hotel costs to worry over. Remember that order to be online? Early 20-teens data costs were insane. Add roaming, you get where this goes. I dutifully followed orders and ate roaming data like a social media obsessed teenager. I logged hours and dutifully submitted them to payroll. I drank like a fish and had the best time with my brother. End of the month, I'm back and being a good peon with my head down and keyboard clicking when the calendar entry pings in. Seems I am to be favored with another face-to-face. I have an idea of what is coming, but oh boy. Bob appears to be in the middle of a meltdown. What the hell have you done? You have caused incalculable damage to my reputation in this company. The other board and Jim were laughing at me saying I can't control you. You're out. You're over. I interrupted in parade ground voice, standing to my full 6'4". I'm covered. Your hubris and ineptitude are laughable. If I'm out, it'll be by my choosing and with a clean sheet. Jim knows full well that I wouldn't drop the ball on compliance, regardless of your meddling in things you're not even aware of. Everything you forgot is covered except your own backside. You're not even peer-worthy, let alone superior to me, even though you may be higher ranking. Yes, I got that from a film I can't remember, but this part is crystal clear. I bid you good day. I turned 180 and walked out of the office into stunned silence across the open-plan 100-seat floor and back down to my desk. The fallout. I enjoyed the inevitable HR session chaired by Jim. I promised to not use any manner that might be deemed threatening for 6 months. I was also returned to reporting to Jim, who reinstated my overtime plus time in lieu for the time I worked on holiday, and let me get back to keeping things compliant. Bob did indeed have a full meltdown soon after. My show of assertion crumpled the empire of fear. They left to enjoy early retirement and faded into memory. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called K1YCO. It says, I am curious. Other than micromanaging, what purpose would calling twice a day serve? I might be missing something. OP responded and said, literally no purpose. Nothing I could do except reply to a few emails and voicemails, of which maybe one over the 2 weeks would have given the team pause for thought in my absence. Pretty sure it was just a flex, or maybe Bob's need to feel in control. Apparently, a lot of people in the comments for this one didn't really understand what happened and where the malicious compliance was. So let's summarize this really quickly. Bob was a micromanaging butthole who ordered OP to take a holiday, but be in contact twice every day while on holiday, presumably using a work phone. The phone bill comes in, OP has cover your butt documentation, micromanaging butthole loses a lot of face at management level due to his order to be in touch twice daily. OP gets time in lieu for the hours worked while on holiday, and now he works under a much better boss. Wow, Bob really reminds me of Rick. We haven't had one of these in here in a long time, so let's put it in now. Screw you, Rick. This story comes to us from The Lightning Count 1. You wanted 0 idle time in Teams? Okay, we can do that. This story is from a few years ago. It's how I helped my sister and somehow got her company to willingly bypass their own idle time requirements. Her company went work from home after the lockdown and stayed working from home. At first, they were required an always-on camera system, but that quickly went away as the amount of unintended nudity that comes from your average household is quite startling. Then they went with the system that tracks your idle time in Teams, the amount of write-ups, meetings, group meetings, and eventual terminations for what was the dumbest requirement ever caused my sister to ask for help. She sent me an Amazon link for one of those USB sticks that jiggles the mouse. I told her don't use those as even lazy IT can detect them. At the time, Amazon wasn't selling mechanical mouse turners yet, or at least at reasonable prices. So I looked at building one. I found an STL file, that's a 3D model for those who don't know, for this flowery mouse holder which I modified to be just straight monocolor and 3D printed it. I cut out 1.5-inch circular disc and put it on a weak motor and connected it to a power source through USB. I set the wheel to spin every 1 to 12 seconds for a total of 2 to 5 seconds at a time, but ran into an issue. Sometimes the disc spinning would not actually move the mouse. I found a company that would print stickers at $1 a sticker if I ordered 5 of them. So I found this basic pattern of squares and lines crisscrossing each other and had it printed to just under the dimensions of the disc. I stuck it on there and the mouse turner worked perfectly. I quickly ran into another issue. Since the disc was raised, it quickly got hung up on the mouse with the sticker. So back into design I went and made it where the dimensions were slightly larger for the base and sit it where the disc would be 2 millimeters below the actual mouse. After printing it, the mouse sat on the cradle and the disc spun without touching. The mouse cursor would randomly just move in weird directions at the times the disc spun. So with all of that out of the way, I got a free lunch out of my sister and delivered it. It hooked up to her laptop's USB port, never being detected, and would turn her wheel, decreasing her idle time down to 0. Within 2 weeks, she was recognized as a top performer. She was watching crime dramas with her volume at max until she got a notification that a customer submitted a request. In other words, her productivity stayed exactly the same. So she calls me up and asks if I can make more of them. Thankfully, I saved the STL files and could order more stickers if I needed. I told her I could make each one for 25 bucks. The cheapest on Amazon at the time were like 50, and it only cost me roughly 12 bucks to make them, which went down to 8 bucks to make them at the end. She said several coworkers were asking her about it, and she said she would just give them my number. Within a month, I had built about 50 mechanical mouse turners, which was kind of a waste as this company only had 32 employees. I miscounted. Sometimes I would meet 5 or more of her coworkers at a restaurant at the same time, just so I wouldn't have to drive all over DFW. Then one weekend, I get a call from the CEO of that company. See, all of his workers were using the mouse turners, and he wasn't. So when the company published the report on idle times, his was abysmally low. That phone call was one of the most surreal I have ever had. At first, he thought I was one of his employees. I told him I wasn't. I worked for a waste management company. I don't, but I wasn't about to tell him. He asked me about the mouse turners. I told him that I designed them for a friend, but that person no longer worked for his company. Again, lies. I was protecting my sister. Not like he couldn't figure it out, but still, he asked if he could get one. This is where the conversation went very weird. See, I tried convincing him to give up the idle timer requirements as it clearly wasn't important and only harmed his company. I laid out all of my points for it and pointed out that the CEO of the company is buying a device specifically designed to bypass his requirement. He would not budge. He was so into his company dogma that he just wanted one from me. I already had a few left over, so I told him I could make him one for 35 bucks. Here is the really screwed up part of the story. He asked for a full list of my clients, promising that no one would be fired. He just wanted to know how many. I told him that a list would be unnecessary as it's every single one of his employees, literally all 32 excluding him. His response was to have the company reimburse each employee the $25 for the mouse turners and set it up where his company would contact me each time a new employee started. I said I had 10 left over from the initial batch of ones I made and I could just give him those and have him contact me when he runs out. He agreed. Well, that kind of never happened, as a company on Amazon made what is basically the same thing I was making for like 15 bucks. Theirs is much nicer than mine was too. So a company set idle time requirements which caused issues at the company. Now the company buys devices for each employee, so that bypasses the idle timer. OP added an edit on at the bottom of this one. It says, edit, a lot of people keep bringing up PowerShell scripts, analog watches, a weight on your spacebar, or any other device that does it digitally or with regularity. I designed mine to have randomization in it. The reason is simple. IT departments can detect those USB thumbsticks, can detect PowerShell scripts that move your mouse. They have usage reports that show your mouse moved one time each minute exactly on the minute mark. Not every company has these, and some don't have anything even close to this, but some do, and this device was designed to be as undetectable as possible. One of the guys I gave this to said he has zero work to do until after his lunch break. So what he does is simply log in, set the mouse turner, and go back to sleep. He has his volume at full blast right by his ear, so if he gets a Teams message, it wakes him up. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Jabroon. It says he's possibly made a mistake and got a contract with a firm that does the tracking where he gets screwed if he canceled. This is possibly his malicious compliance too. OP responded and said possibly, I know he uses outside IT for his IT needs. Yeah, it definitely sounds like this CEO is reporting these fake numbers and maybe trying to use them to make the company look better, either to customers or maybe outside investors, I'm not sure. This story comes to us from Path of Uncertainty. You want to put how much concrete in your Civic? Many years ago, I worked in a locally run store that sold a bit of everything. I was the low-paid teenager that carried heavy things to people's vehicles. While working one day, I get called over the radio that a customer needed 12 bags of concrete, 80 pounds each. I was expecting to see a pickup truck or something similar backed up to our loading area. Instead, I saw a small Honda Civic there waiting for me. Thinking it was a mistake, I asked the driver to relocate momentarily as I had someone coming to pick up multiple bags of concrete. Imagine my surprise when they told me that they were the customer I was waiting for. I asked the customer how much they wanted to take in each trip, as I believe the nearly 1,000 pounds of concrete might be too much for such a small vehicle to handle safely. The customer became aggravated and insisted that they were taking it all at once. I quickly ran this past the store owner to make sure I wouldn't be held liable for any damages. I ran back, apologized to the customer, and began loading the bags. As I loaded everything up, the customer made several quips about how the customer is always right, and that I was too young and naive to understand that vehicles are engineered with a margin of safety. It quickly became apparent that there was no play left in the suspension. But at this point, I just stopped questioning things. I couldn't fit all of the bags in the trunk, so the customer cleared their back seat and I loaded that up as well. Upon leaving the loading area, you could clearly hear things rubbing. As the car went to exit the parking lot, it passed over the elevation change between the lot and the road. There was a loud pop of something breaking, followed by scraping. I could see that the driver was irate in the car. After a moment, they got out, looked around and under their car. The guy sheepishly asked for my cell phone because his had died and he needed to make a few phone calls. A short time later, a tow truck came to remove the car, and the guy waited in our lot for nearly an hour until his wife could come pick him up. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called OpenScore. It says, your judgment was concrete. Too bad his ego couldn't handle the weight. Another commenter down below called Speculatrix says, customer was probably mortified. You know, this might have actually worked out if they had distributed the weight evenly around the car. I mean, obviously you can't put anything in the driver's seat, but that's where that guy with the massive ego goes, and he probably weighs the same as the amount of concrete that you'd put in the passenger seat. Putting all that weight into the trunk and only in the back seat was just a recipe for disaster. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to your favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. Also, if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like the video, it really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.